Now we're over at George Ventrini's house, and believe me when I tell you, he just had his sewer line replaced. What a pain in the ass. Anyway, this ought to be fun. Peabody and I just carried down a glass table and a door similar to what I have in my shop. See, through the magic of video, you can see how the rich and the famous live. Whoop! Look at that! Sweeper! Hey! He's got this. Look at this. You got to go down the stairs and what a bum! Look at this. How many people have an anvil in their living room?
What's that?
How many people have an anvil in their living room? Look at this bum. Yeah, we don't want any soda or coffee or sandwich or a blimpie or what. Look at that table. The Tavio's smart. He stays home when there's work to be done. Now George has the same setup I have. What are you taking, Peabody? That little piece? We're playing musical glass. He's taking a little glass. That's nice.
I talked to Jimmy about this.
Okay, you and Jimmy made the deal? George, this is beautiful.
No,
this is beautiful.
He said his is 8 foot. I don't know.
Yeah, he measured it this morning.
Now look, here's some ideas you might want to do in your shop. Of course, I forced George to do this. He's so disorganized. Open it up, George. Let's see how you got this. Organized?
No.
No?
No.
If this isn't organized, it's going to be on video. I'm telling Adam Usko. Oh, not organized, not organized.
All right, Amusco, eat your heart out.
Adam Usko, eat your heart out is right. All these little drawers.
I know my shop is messed up, but it's usually worse than this.
This is the best I've ever seen. Anyway, give you some ideas for your shop. Best idea of all is get somebody to come over and redo it for you. Nice bandsaw, nice drill press. Where's Tsunami? I didn't even see him. I won't belabor this. We have work to do on a Spitfire. Look at this. He's painting fire engines up here from photographs. George, you're okay. I don't care what Peabody says. Look at Tsunami. Oh, man. Big Tsunami. George, kiss him for me. Oh, my God. Got to get the wing work done next week. Oh, my God. He is such a beast. Look at this joker in the shop here. Get some ideas for your shop. Mirrors. Mirrors are, now you have 2 Tsunamis. Nice paintings. Nice music in the background. Tsunami tail. And look at him. The guy's a wino. Don't tell anybody. What kind of wine is that? Is that Steve DeJulia wine?
No, that's
Strega wine? The guy almost killed him.
That's cream sherry. I drink nothing but the best.
Look at this picture here he painted. Need more aviation stuff down here, George.
Huh?
More aviation stuff. Look at this fat. This is George's claim to fame. He's in every museum in Poland with these fire engines. Modern, unbelievable. Notice how many empty wine bottles. He says he keeps thinner in them to clean his brushes.
You can say that empty wine bottles, but I'm painting my way into a master still life.
Still life. Hey, look at this Tsunami. I tell you, George, you got some shop here. But seriously, this table is what I really came here to show. This is what you need to do serious building. The Windy, John DeTavio, George Ventrini replica table. Unbelievable.
These lines are nice. Boy,
Oh, they're beautiful. Now we're out in George's backyard. This is what we spent 2.5 years of our joint effort, or his effort, my effort, I don't know who, to doodle up this backyard like this. However, it is fall and everything's at the end of the Oh, he's starting his village.
Is Joe here?
No, I'm just videotaping his village. Now look, this is my friend Joe. Oh my God, I believe it. He's trying to outdo my village. He doesn't know he's in big trouble. This is his. These are the trains that were in my attic. Oh my God. And we're not going to put a lot on video, but we're going to spend the whole night getting this guy a Christmas village. Nice hallway he has here anyway. He's out getting food. Now just remember, everybody, you have to have a Christmas village. Everybody. I'm not the only one going to suffer through this. Anyway, look at this beautiful painting of their house. Beautiful stuff here. This is some beautiful house. But who cares about the house? Anybody can buy a house, but not everybody can make a Christmas village.
Beautiful. Nice, beautiful.
Hey, you want to wave to the audience?
Oh, go away, Wendy. Go away. He's always with the camera. Go.
When do we get into the nude hot tub?
Bye. Ready.
I'm ready, huh?
Right now. When you-
You got to put the whole thing on if we're going to work on a railroad here. Step one is he can't decide where his tree should go. Come on, where the hell are you?
My scarf on here. In case he goes.
Hard to believe.
You gotta put it in that corner, right?
All right, we're going to move it over so that it's in that corner, and then you can decorate it from walking up and down the stairs. Step one. Boy, this is such a... We put an extra set of legs on it, number one, because it wasn't so stable in the beginning. Now we're trying to lay it out for the... Notice he has a 17-foot ceiling here for the tree. Now we got some kind of rough layout here as to where we want to have the tree has to stand there, of course. Now we got everything braced up here. We got Joe's trolley. We're getting ready to put the legs on it. Trying to figure out how we want to do some of the buildings. This is where we involve the women. How many more buildings you got, Laura? Oh, he's got more tracks. Oh my God.
A lot more buildings. Where are these?
Go right into the wall, Joe, with those tracks.
I didn't bring enough straight track.
Joe, where are the buildings that we,
Just get an idea how this looks. So you're coming down the stairs to see your Christmas village, and oh, there's somebody rearranging your Christmas village.
I know you know
Oh,
nothing about
man.
buildings, but is this the building that
Hey,
was
cute
mentioned?
wife.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so maybe we don't need it.
They were all in bags. I brought the bags
Oh,
up.
okay, then I went through them. I don't have my glasses on, I can't tell.
You don't need the lights yet. Just leave. I'll put all the lights on in one shot.
Is this all the buildings out there?
Honey, I don't know anything about buildings.
Let's get this.
Okay, we have to get this so you can see it from all.
Okay, no marital problems on video here.
I saw a mirror.
That's the lake.
Yeah, you got the ice skaters?
I have hockey players.
Oh my God.
That's the mirror that goes.
I think we're missing some buildings. Let me take a...
I don't know, Joe. He looked. Hey, watch. One's off the track. He looked real happy up in my my storage room.
I look kind of happy to be home. Slide this in.
just like being a kid again. Just like model planes. Like Spitfires. No, that's all medium.
Medium.
Yeah, medium paper.
Well, medium is what? Double?
GM. SIG GM, the medium. Not the heavy, not the light. Anyway, we're finally done with Joe's Village. Had a great time. All dope's dried out here.
Looks just like my wing, Wendy.
Same thing? How many coats of clear you got on your wing?
Gassing off 5.
Okay.
Fifth coat.
Joe brought down a lot of interesting stuff. We got some pictures to put on a video. We have stuff from our friend in England. Let's see what you got.
Yeah. Okay.
We need toys. It's Christmas time. Speaking of toys, look at all these Lionel tracks getting ready to do our village. Hell with Joe's Village. We're going to do our village next week. Let's see what you got. Do any more concept drawings?
Yeah, concept drawings. I got things for you. We'll go into this.
All right.
Yeah, I brought you some things to look at. Some Spitfire
All right.
info.
Spitfires.
Things I wanted to talk to you about. I just cut this out of the Aircraft Modeler magazine. There's a Spitfire, the Invasion.
I saw this in real life. He's on the Nats video.
Okay, now, George said that my sketches look like barber poles. That's how the airplane looks. I can't help it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It looks like a barber pole. And here's,
Invasion stripes is what we're talking about, being so large.
and here's something if you wanted to, just to put this in your collection.
Okay.
For panel lines or something,
Yeah, yeah.
Here's a book that aviation history. It kind of talks about a Battle of Britain kind of deal here. You want to get a shot of that cover?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, light coat.
No,
tight coat.
It's a tight coat, straight, no thinner. Now,
Okay, this is no thinner in it
no
now?
thinner. Now,
Okay. Fisheye killer and
Yeah, got all
flexible
this stuff.
added? Okay.
No, I know you're not going to use it all. You just want to come.
No.
Just take what you need and mix it to your consistency.
What Joe did, this is the shrink, I call it shrink dope. He's did just what I suggested, to put the label on. I'll show this up close. And I'll do it this afternoon when Karen's out. I'll take it outside. I'll get 2 coats of shrink dope on the tissue. Or, where is she? Is she over there? No, she's not around, so we can talk man to man. We'll get 2 coats of this on and try to get it to gas off outside so it doesn't stink the house up. That's more, 10 times more than you need. By the way, yesterday I picked up at a place called Michael's, a craft shop, beautiful 1-inch dope brushes. Beautiful ones. They're
Stiff
like...
bristle or they...
No. The camel hair brushes. They're beautiful. And this is the shrink dope, high shrink. When he put the fisheye and flexor. You should only use never more than 2 coats, and only on the open bays, and maybe go out onto this 1/8 of an inch the most. If you go out over here and on the wood, the thing is, you're just going to shrink it needlessly. I'll tell you the truth, this almost doesn't need any. It's so nice and tight. The tissue job came out so nice. What else we got here? The Battle of Little Ferry. Look at this. Hurricanes, Spitfires. Oh my God, this is really nice. I got a bunch of other stuff. It's on the videos. I'll give you a copy of them today, Joe. Flip it. Oh man.
Hurricane.
You saw the stuff Frank McMillan sent in already? All right, that's on the videos. Oh man, super. This is one of the planes I really love too. This is the what is it? The S2 or the S4, whatever the hell it is. I can't even read it. The Schneider Cup racers they had years ago, 300-mile-an-hour planes with all the V engines. Unbelievable.
White Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
And here's a pretty good view of the
now
type positionings. Now, that's how I looked at this when I kind of made up those paint sketch drawings.
You're right.
And proportion-wise, they're tucked in.
Joe, I didn't realize. See, I thought, I guess I'm wrong. I thought these invasion stripes only went halfway out. This goes 2/3 of the way out. Oh man, that's...
So it does add a dimension there.
Well, it makes it a whole lot brighter than if it was just camo.
All right, so you get a chance, you might want to read that over, check that out. Here's
Well, read it.
Here's
I'll
something
memorize
I know. This will bring you up to speed on the 24 variants of these Spitfires.
Okay, flip through this real quick.
Okay. Starts with the Spitfire 1 versions, wooden two-bladed propellers.
Right.
Then it takes you through the entire sequence. There's only one small section in it that's color, but it gets into Spitfire development.
I've been noticing how on that book that Frank McMillan's in, and all the rudders are different. Like every single rudder is different on these.
And there were reasons for it. The more horsepower,
The more rudder
the more
they needed.
fin base, and there were different
Yep.
control.
The same as the Red Baron. When they put the big engine in, they needed to have the side area. Incredible.
I know you don't like to get in a lot of.
Oh, this is a good thing.
Exactly.
The shot of the canopy here. When I carved that block, oh, not looking forward to that.
I wouldn't even mind having a job holding one back like that. Or pulling the wheel chucks.
Yeah, right.
Changing an engine. This is the Polish Squadron.
Yeah, that's in
Signal.
Frank's book too. Yeah.
Here's a Russian version Spitfire with a star. This is a classic photo that's been done in paintings. You can see the one radiator scoop and one air intake deal. So
Yeah, right. This was for more line tension, by the way.
Here's, repair work. Here's Jimmy Doolittle sitting in a Spitfire with the American, insignia.
Yeah.
Reconnaissance versions. This was that tropical air filter to dusty conditions in
Yeah.
Africa and Italy and so forth. Different Mark Spitfire. Mark
Some of the
10,
different
Mark 8.
variants of it. Yeah.
You can see the pointy wingtips on this one for high altitude performance.
Look at this one down here.
Tail
That's
development.
nice. This is great. A Spitfire with the mouth on it. The Paul Walker mouth. Oh my God.
Mark 9. This is basically the fuse fin rudder deal that I guess
That we're gonna
we're
use,
trying
yeah.
to work with.
Yeah.
Mark 9.
I think that's the nicest one. Most generic, I guess, too. You're right about the invasion stripes. They're tremendous.
Now see where they had the black. There was always white, black, white, black, white. There were always two black stripes. Now to get their insignia lettering over top, they'd have to do white over black or black over the white with
Yeah,
white lettering. It gets a
exactly.
little complicated, but
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm
Here's
paying
some-
you for. Oh, yes. Yes, Midgley, eat your heart out here. Look at this. This is cool with the invasion stripes up in the front.
I'm not quite sure what that's. July 1942, what that meant. Some kind of squadron markings. But look at these. The Czech, Polish,
Yeah.
Norwegian, French, Dutch, and Belgian squadrons that they...
Joe, this is the most exciting part of the whole thing, is
Oh,
just
see
looking
that?
at all this.
Windy, I think about this stuff all week long.
It's like a sickness. I mean, if you can't get excited about something like this, you just better forget it and get a girlfriend.
Now,
That's
see,
all there
here's
is
a
to it.
version with the pointy tail and clipped wings for low altitude performance.
Yeah, right.
And this is the one that I kind of had my eye on, this
Yeah.
recon version. And I'll show you what I've done with that sketch-wise, but it, even the Seafire,
The Seafire, yeah.
this is the only color that, I have, but it shows some examples. And then the book goes through, you'll learn about all the other variants.
Oh, I'll check it all out,
Oh, yeah.
believe me. I want to be the Spitfire Maven here.
Okay. And then here's that recon. And these things used to have a 2,000-mile range.
Woo!
Where they used the B wing, which had all kind of internal capacity. Of course, it didn't have any guns in it. Just load that wing up with fuel. They could fly from England over Germany and back so fast and so high that nobody could challenge it.
Yeah.
But they had that oblique cameras where they can take pictures of what was going on. Look at this. This is interesting. These are Czech trainers, or Dutch, excuse me.
I
Dutch
just got
Spitfire.
some pictures from a guy on this
With
too.
double
canopies.
bubbles, yeah.
I just put some on the tape before this. There's a bunch of pictures of this exact thing with the trainer canopies.
Interesting.
For pilot training, yeah. Here's the clipped wing.
Clip E-wing, and you know, here's a nice study of the bubble canopy version. This is a Mark 16.
Yeah, right.
Let's see, this had the I guess the B wing or C wing, and this had the other than elliptical.
Yeah.
Now this is up getting into 1944.
This is when they were already camoed to go over the water.
Right. And
You
there
already
were
have
two different versions
the
of
blue-green camo.
Exactly. And some more recon. Here's a clip wing. These are from Belgian Air Force. They look like they're all aluminum with their insignia. Boy, that looks nice too. You know,
Oh, yeah.
A sharp version. But too bad aluminum, you lose that in the stunt circuit.
Yeah, that's not good for a stunt ship. It disappears. Those invasion stripes won't disappear, though. Forget about that.
Here's that photo recon version.
Look at the blades on these props. These are the
Five
five-bladed
blades.
Centaurus props. Look at the size of these blades. Holy crow. This is cool. This is definitely cool.
Check this.
We ought to think about something like this.
Here's this Mark 21 where it says this is an excellent flying view, County of London, Royal Auxiliary Air Force during the Halcyon days of the 1940s when flying machines like this on weekends made a man's weekly task lighter. Can you imagine being in some kind of...
Yeah, right. Oh, God. This I like. Look at this. This would look good on anything. Midgley. This would look good on a Cardinal. This, you know, this is a cool idea too, Joe. Is the this is what they do when they put the Griffin engines in there?
Yeah, it had the big valve cover. Here.
Yep, the
Check
big
it out.
valve covers.
Yeah, so, hey, you know, anything. Here's a neat, if you just look at this, you study this. It's a recon version. It could be whatever color it is, and then it's got an anti-glare panel across the front top, insignias. But
Yeah.
if you took this same basic airplane and you said, okay, we're going to race that at Reno, and you wanted to do something to it to make it look like, okay, you can see it going around the pylons, you can add a little color here and there. So it
Yeah.
could be a military plane with... Now here's the Mark 21. This is where the wing changed its shape from that
Right.
elliptical
right.
planform characteristic to a...
The 21 to 24s.
Right. Which, you know, you could do that someday too if you wanted to use that style wing in some other kind of a stunt ship. Here's one that has different colored body parts. 5-bladed prop. Spitfire, the non-elliptical platform.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the size of the, to take all the
Yeah,
torque.
right. The bigger the power is, the more of a rudder fin they want. Same as the Red Baron.
Here's a nice study.
Yeah, that's nice.
Look at those 20mm cannons or whatever they are.
They're big, whatever the hell they are.
That's why they call it a Spitfire.
Look at the smoke on this when you're using all caster fuel. You know, you can't make one of these and have it sound like a sewing machine. This has to sound like a, has to have that deep-throated sound.
Sea fires. Look how they used to park
Seafires,
these
yeah.
off the side of the deck to clear the deck.
Cool. There's a lot of this stuff you don't even know. You know, even though I record every wings in the world, I have every wings they ever made here. It's unbelievable how much you miss.
Wooden propellers snapped
Yeah.
off, rough landing.
And I'm sure we're going to get more stuff donated in. I can feel it coming.
But
Just like tsunami.
when you read through this, you'll have a
Oh, I
pretty,
will,
pretty good
yeah.
understanding of.
Yeah, this is a nice one too.
This
This
is-
is one of the nicer ones.
Right.
This-
And look at
With that
this,
paint
the
job.
insignia. The
yeah, how big they are, yeah.
but they are different. They had a roundel, but then they had these tabs on them, like the American.
Yeah, almost like an American
Star and
without
bar.
the star, yeah.
And
Here's that nose section again. See, the valve covers, those big giant valve covers, when they put the Griffin engine in some of the models. I want to see this again. You know what I wish we could figure out, Joe, and I don't think we can. You see this, the shape of this spinner? None of the spinners that are available are like this. None of these. They all have a a different. That's one thing we have to work on is what to make a decision what spinner we're going to ultimately use on this. And Joe's got the latest version with all the ink lines on it.
Now this would be the bottom wing panel. I mean, it's just a concept deal. But as I
Yeah,
started,
these are like the little Busso drawings.
as I started to go through these with these colored pencils, and I try to pick out some.
Yeah. It's difficult, I know.
What you end up doing is you just, you know, copying something, but that's okay. At least to give you an idea what it looks
Yeah,
like. Now,
yeah.
to me, this would be a Battle of Britain version, okay?
Right.
And then you look at this and say, hey, how would that look if I'm flying this thing?
Exactly.
But
Needs the invasion stripes.
yeah, now see, so I had that version. Here's one, just different colors. This was cedar green, French gray. Here's one that's French gray, silver gray, blue, you know, just to see how these
Yeah, the
different
invasion
colors.
stripes make it. That's
Invasion stripes do something different to these airplanes.
definitely on the plan.
Here's gunmetal, blue gray, sky blue combo.
That's a nice combination.
Here's one blue gray, silver gray, sky blue. And then I put a note here to myself, try almond green undersurface rather than this blue. That doesn't do too much, but I couldn't get pencils that color. So you can only go so far with this concept thing, but I said, well, what would it look like if it was all olive drab? And then before I got good pencils, my wife told me this looks like a cow. Camouflage cow.
A cow. Spitfire
Now
cow.
these get cruder as we go.
Yeah,
Here, look
yeah.
at this.
This is a Paul Walker Spitfire.
That's like a chameleon.
Neon.
Something out of tropical rainforest.
Holy
right?
crap, it looks like a bug.
This is what I was thinking about. Hey,
See how your mind wanders? when you're
candy
doing
apple,
Spitfire?
fluorescent
Oh,
green,
man.
right? Hey, there's another one.
Yeah.
But here I missed the white stripe. But you know, you kind of
Yeah.
get better. Then I thought, okay, if we're going to do Reno racer kind of thing, what would some of those kinds of airplanes look like? Well, yellow and red, that's one thing. Blue and black, that would be something different. Here's some.
That's kind of a nice
Yeah.
one. This is kind of like.
I'm starting to get into
There, now you got it.
This is where
There
I
you got
started
it.
to look at. Okay, if you like yellow, wait, what if
Yeah,
what if
yeah.
you like, you know,
We're not too sick, are we?
Honolulu blue?
Yeah, that looks nice.
Now, I mean, you
That's
can
I don't know if
see
that's
that
a cow or a
a
chameleon.
green and black cow, right?
Wow.
And then it kept going, and I figured, okay, try the combination, all kinds of different things. Yellow with black, with blue, with invasion
Yeah,
stripes.
yeah.
Ertnowski had a Musco Squadron, or whatever you want
And
to
Jim,
call it.
yeah.
This was one I thought I started to get to. I liked this.
Yeah.
I liked it so much that I did another one. And I'm kind of logging it. Right now, I'm down to these. These are my two choices.
Yeah, the Warbird one and the Reno Air Race one.
This would be a Reno Air Racer to me. It would be a recon version that if I get some medium aqua or blue gray or something like that, that yellow would stand out on. And then
Oh,
you
we have that neon yellow that
then
that
you-
Midgley got for us.
And then you have the undersurface.
Yeah.
Something that would be light enough that you could do some panel lines and still make it out. But can you picture this one coming around pylons with yellow wingtips?
Oh
and-
God, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Be beautiful.
So that's where I got to. And I like this idea, you know, if you're going to put some logos on this, like Supermarine.
Ultramarine. Sounds like a detergent.
But see,
though,
the
doesn't
Supermarine was the
it?
aircraft.
You're vulnerable
you
when
know,
you write something like this. on your
aircraft
plane.
company that,
Yes, I know.
you know, that made the well, you know what I'm talking
Allison Griffin.
about. And you go on and on. And
Alice in
on.
Wonderland.
There's all that. And
Joe, you definitely have the illness like that. Now the deal is we have choices of spinners. This is one that we can't buy anymore. This is a 2 1/4 inch Russian spinner. There's only one in the country. And this is it. So I don't want to build a plane that we don't have identical spinners on. I kind of eliminated this one. It's 2 1/4. These are the Red Baron spinners that don't have the right shape. You know, they have the, they're too blunt. We need something not as pointy. We may have to make our own spinner. See, this would be a nice choice, but it's 1 3/4.
do you have any of those units that I gave you this past summer?
Over in a box. Hang on. Joe, get it. It's over by the trophy over there. Anyway, what we've been looking at, what I'd like to know, and somebody out in computer land there may have one for us. They may have a 2 1/4 inch, like a needle nose. See, if we could get a bunch of these, this is almost like Spitfire City.
Well, that's-
But I only have one of them.
But you could do something with this little rubber plug to turn that down and make that more blunt, you know.
Oh yeah, the plug, you could make the plug out of balsa wood or something too. That wouldn't matter. This is 2 1/4.
And you could paint that white some color, even if it's a...
See, we got to make a decision. That's before I even start the fuselages. We got to make sure we're not building something that we only have one spinner for. I don't like that idea. But these spinners, the blunt Vicos are too blunt. The needle noses are too needle nosy. This is a carbon. I made this spinner. This is carbon fiber. No advantage. And this is the one. This is a true turn that I made a tip for. See, this would almost be a Spitfire, but I don't want to get into custom making bullshit that we only have one of. So we got a few extra back plates and stuff here. But this, Joe, if you could get, this is the spun ones. If you could get, but you got to get more than one. You can't start off with one spinner here. That's the problem. So somebody out there, send me a tool.
Concept 1?
Yeah. Now you've got, that's your tail. Let me just make sure you understand. What I want you to do is take, what I did, I took a half a grain off each side of that with a sanding block. Not for weight, just to make it a little bit thinner, because I wanted the elevators thinner than the stab.
Okay.
It's glassed, it's sanded, it's got the fillet in there, and that's the lighter of the two, so you should be a little bit ahead of me on that. Not that it, believe me,
Joe.
believe me, it's not. You don't decoupage this damn thing. Sand the paint off when you get it on. Oh, look at the Spitfires.
Wendy, where is this? Where we're going to have a stab on this thing? Position?
Latest. Turn it up so the horn is facing up, just for now. It'll let you reference in for the elevator line. You can see how much thought anybody watching these tapes thinks we're bullshitting here. This is a lot of thought and energy going into... Actually, because Bob Martens is doing a super job of making plans for anybody.
Is that what that's going to be?
Yes.
All right, that makes me...
Anybody out there is going to... now, you got to be able to... Here's your hinge line. You've got... The hinge line is going to come even with this. You follow through, so your
gotcha.
rod is only going to be 1 inch long.
There's the hinge line. Okay, great.
Okay.
And that's going to be enough throw to...
Yes. Now, what Mike Rogers is going to do, I talked to Mike. He's going to come over the day that you have your wing and tail in silver, and you know what they weigh, and tell me what the nose moment arm should be.
Oh, so...
If you got the wing and tail in silver, he's got the calculations for the nose moment arm. I think it's going to be 10 1/4 or something.
Does that mean that
So I'll have my wing in
we'll
silver in a
have
week.
2 planes with 2 different nose moments?
No. We'll average them.
Well, then why don't we go... Okay.
Or you can run off mine, but I think yours is good. Here's what I'm saying. Yours, we ought to reference off the heavier of the two.
That would be...
I'm assuming you were going to put more paint on.
yeah.
Maybe not though. Maybe you're going to kill me on this. I don't know.
Surprise you.
But we won't put the AMA numbers on until they're done. So I would rather have the heavier of the two. It isn't that that big and important. Joe, another thing I've been working on is the radiators. I've been thinking about how to make a a nice attachment mode for the radiators, like Midgley has on that side scoop on his Cardinal. That's what I'd like to do. Believe me, that's going to be perfect. Don't even think about it.
Okay.
Put a lot of time on that.
Back to spinners.
Yeah, spinners.
That's a 2 1/4 point.
Okay, here's what I'm saying. When we make the cowlings, I want to try to get this shape here. Strega would have a straight line here.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this exact curve in here. I don't know, but the advantage will be I'll make one, and if it doesn't look right, then we can... You don't want to make one of these things where the motor overheats either. And you can't, because this will be a mold. From here to here will be a mold.
Yeah, this is what you got to explain.
And a mold from there back. That'll be a no problem, and a bottom block.
You're going to be able to mold that canopy in there.
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. And this will be part of the mold too, this piece back here. So from here, the first former will be here. And this will all be, and I'll do the cockpit details, because when I do them, I'll make 2 of every. I bought the cockpit details yesterday. I'll show you what I got
You mean
upstairs.
cockpit details, or are we talking...
Cockpits.
We're
I
not-
got landing lights and everything for the little red
We're not
jewels.
going to do
I
painted-
bought $6
We're
worth
not going
of.
to do painted on blocks. When
No,
that red light's
no.
on, does that mean...
Yeah, it's on. It's right, man. Spitfires are being built here. I want to have the dashboard, I have the light. I bought $6 worth of these little jewels to make the lights. The gear is up, gear is down, red and green, red and green, red and green.
Okay. Oh, hey, I know. Here's something else. Before I forget.
Okay.
You know, you had that question on these wheels.
The wheels, yeah. This is what we're
Okay,
thinking
we
about
don't, we
too.
don't need to see this part, but I called these ProMag people.
What did
It
they
was great.
say?
I called, little kid answers the phone, there's dogs and chickens. And I wasn't sure I had the right place, you know.
Uncle
So I
Jim's
said,
farm.
hey, is this the number? Yeah, and then this kid's mother comes on the phone and she said, get out of here. So finally, after
man.
everything settled down, yeah, Pro Mags, they make 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2. And I asked, well, hey, how heavy are these things? The 2 1/4s weigh 21 grams.
Okay, 3/4 of an ounce. That's acceptable.
And they're $29.95 a set. The spare rubber tires are $4.99.
No, the money doesn't mean
Her
that.
husband flies pattern competition,
Yeah, yeah.
and they need these real lightweight. They need wheels that are lightweight, you know, with their retract gear system,
Yeah.
that they can replace the rubber on. But they look like they're pretty neat. You know, they kind of have that.
Well, I think we should get one set just to see.
All right, so I checked that out. Weight-wise, that looks like.
Yeah, that's a ballpark. That's a
Ballpark.
no-brainer.
Okay, so in other words, you'll shut the camera off.
Yeah, I'll shut the camera off. I want to put these pictures. Now, Joe did a sequential thing, which we hope to use on the article, of building. You can do the commentary here, Joe. That's number 1 on there now.
Okay, number 1 shows an end view of the wing as it's set up in the rod support blocks, with the plan form on top of the glass plate that's on a building board, which is on top of my workbench. And one of the reasons I chose to do it this way, so that you can kind of swing around and rotate the glass plate, the building board, the wing, and whatever phase of construction it is on the blocks, so that you can work at it from both sides of the bench. And I kind of use an island type bench that one ends up against the wall. It makes it easier than having something locked in.
Yeah, that's on that video where we went to your shop.
Right.
We just got George one of those glass tables, too. This is photo number 2. I'll try to keep these in some kind of reasonable order.
Okay, and photo 2 just has an oblique view of the partially assembled wing in the jig or rod support jig, and pretty much shows the same thing as number 1 except from an oblique view.
Okay. Number 3.
Number 3 is an aft view of the tip sweep trailing edge.
Oh, you can
And
see before the trailing edge is
this
installed? Okay.
Before the trailing edge sheeting's installed. And matter of fact, this is before I made an adjustment to a little fillet cutout piece in that tip sweep, which is obviously going to be on the plans, but it shows a little closer detail on how this was set up.
Okay, I remember this little photo. These, I hope, will be in the magazine article.
And photo 4 shows the actual molding of the 3/32 balsa sheeting over the leading edge using the support rods and structure of the wing plan framework.
Those big heavy nuts.
The 2-inch nuts, and I never did get a weight on them, but they seem to hold the forming blocks
Just
down
about right, yeah.
just about the right weight.
Okay, number
And
5.
Photo 5 just shows the aft view, or from the trailing edge forward, just to show the contour and how once you got that balsa soaked with ammonia water, made it really pliable, it was able to form or can, you know.
And we'll know more when we try to mold up these blocks, mold up the top and bottom blocks, which we will try to do, I hope.
Okay, and photo 6 just shows an overall view of the sheeted wing, as much as you can sheet before you remove the rods. And I believe the wing at this point has not been turned or rotated for applying the sheet into the bottom of the wing.
Okay, and here's 7.
Okay, photo 7 would show the wing with both sides sheeted, the rods removed, and what I like to do is to have the end sheeting at the tip end, so that when you pull the rods apart, you don't have a structure that'll, you know, kind of sag or accordion move on you and,
right.
and collapse. Okay, and then photo 8 just shows a close-up detail. You can see in the background there's the bell crank, the floating style bell crank, the sheeting that was already cut that will fit over the
Let me get the phone while
opening.
we're doing this. Yeah, before we start the commentary again, we had a phone call from Bob English, the guy with the gold twin with the cameos and everything. Cool. All right, back to reality. Number 8. You may as well pick it up.
Okay, we might be repeating some things here, but this just shows a aft end wingtip view. Obviously, you can see the rods have been removed from the wing. In the background, there's a bell crank with the sheeting for the center section ready to be installed. Okay, what's number 9 have here?
Okay, number 9.
Okay, number 9 has a close-up view of the center section. It shows the rock hard maple spar joiner in position.
That's the joiner up there.
And of course, this is what has holes in it, and this is where the floating bell crank is arranged.
Okay, that's an interesting one. If anybody hasn't been to the stunt forum or seen the stunt forum video, this is Joe's fixture for making flaps.
Okay, and the fixture, I wrote an article for this for the Pampa, and I don't know what issue the Pampa Stunt News it was in, but it describes how I would shape curve control surfaces, and basically it's a block of 1-inch pine wood that has cut to the contour of the flap, obviously the plan form. Then I take sheet metal strips and have holes drilled in them so that I could pin it to the base of the block, and then you put the blank in, and you have your sheet metal strips act as edge guides so that you can set the dimension. In this case, these flaps had they're 1/4-inch wood. They had a 1/16 taken off of one surface, and then of course the jig has to be reversed, and the flap blank is put back in, and you take a 1/16 off the bottom surface, and it gives you a very accurate setup. Otherwise, you would sand in or carve in a warp or a surface that doesn't have concentric both top and bottom sides.
And this is one of the flaps that of course we have them here already, they're already on the model, but this is a real accurate way of getting the flaps on a curved surface.
Especially curves. They're hard to straight line. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but my experience taught me that having a jig makes it a lot easier, especially if you're trying to do maybe more than one here. Okay.
And of course it looks like the same thing for the elevators.
Same deal for the elevator. In this case, it was more of a drastic curve than just that sweeping kind of a curve you have for a flap. This took a little tighter bend with the sheet metal strip, but again held in position with push pins, and in this case we were working with 1/2-inch sheeting, so we took and wanted the finished end result to be a 1/8-inch trailing edge. So you took equal amounts, 3/16 off of one side, reversed the jig setup, and took 3/16 off the other edge surface so that you had a equal taper, no twists or curves. Photo 13 here shows an end view of the finished sanded elevator control surface, and you can see how accurate and exact each one was.
Now, this is an interesting one. It shows the exploded view of when he was putting the tails together.
Photo 14 shows the top and bottom sheeting for the stab. Of course, this is C grain. It shows the 1/4 by 3/8 trailing edge spar. It shows the 3/8 square leading edge material, and I'm sure you can see this in the photo, the leading edge material has zona saw kerf marks around the interior or aft surface so that you can bend this.
So that you can bend it. The whole thing really does.
And once it's bent and you get it to the position or the shape you want, you can CA it so that it... Wendy, can we go back to 14 again?
Okay, sure.
All right, the other items there show the ribs. These are 1/16 by 3/8 thick rib sections, C grain wood that you put into position after you put your trailing edge material on. You can see I have the geodetic ink lines marked on the bottom sheeting. You cement the trailing edge material in, the leading edge material in, and you can put this on a pin board. I think the next photo 15 shows that.
Okay.
You see I was working on 2 stabs at once. I had my wooden building board set up, taped a piece of wax paper down, pinned the trailing edge in position, glued that, glued the leading edge in and worked your geodetic ribs centered to the stab tip. And then after this was set up, the glue in this case was CA, hardened. You take a sanding block, sand off the top surface so your ribs, leading edge and trailing edge, are all the same elevation. And then I use slow drop or setting epoxy to epoxy the top sheeting in position. But you want to remember just to have the epoxy only on the surfaces you want to bond together, and not complete sheeting. And then this shows a kind of a finished rough sanded composite stab and elevator, rough sanded, and of course Wendy did all the refining.
This is before we cut the tips down.
Made the adjustment.
These are the larger size, and the plans will be corrected. Bob's already correcting the plans.
These stabs were 27.5. The stabs now are 26 inches.
And this is the final, what we got it down to, where it's all tapered in on a tip and has the little semi-scale. These are such a pain in the ass to do, but worth it. Like anything that's a labor-intensive thing, I feel it's worth it anyway. And we'll see. Hey, we'll see when these planes get all painted and camoed out and everything.
Okay, now this is Joe's dope, and he's already added. See, this is the reason, it just turns out that way, this is the reason I like to write on there. This is 95, the fisheye killer and flex all's in here. I'll mix about half of this, and I shouldn't need much because I'm only doing, you know, just the open bays, and out onto the wood I'll mix this about 50-50. It's not a critical thing. If it's a little thinner, it's certainly okay. In fact, 60-40 would not be a bad idea at all. Now, as I've said 100 times before, you never want to get shrink dope out beyond the tissue. That is definitely a big mistake. Now, I'm going out onto the wood, and I'm being very careful to go out roughly 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch out onto the wood. That'll give me extra material right at the spot where, and I'm doing each bay individually, and you can get an idea how long this takes, and then I'm going back and forth just to get the brush strokes half even. Of course, the more thinner in the paint, if you put more than 60-40, I would guess you'd need 3 coats. I'm going to try to do this in 2 coats. This is about 60-40. I'll do each bay individually and then back the other way. That'll minimize the brush strokes and absolutely minimize the sanding. Now, on the macro lens, you can see how the brush strokes go in all directions. I've gone out onto the wood. Now remember, this is shrink dope. Now what I'm going to do all the bays. And this is just the best way I know of to do this, is do all the bays, do 1 bay at a time. As soon as you do one side of the wing, flip it and do the other side, of course. You want this all to be loose at the same time and shrink at the same time. Then when everything dries up, everything is shrunk equally, I'll get the second coat on. Let that dry and shrink out, and then I'll take the third coat, I'll paint the whole wing. The same way with light coat. So 2 coats on here, there's a coat already of light coat, 2 coats of shrink, and a 4th coat of light coat, and then we'll start building up the whole wing into the coats of clear we need until it has a little bit of a shine in it. Now, as soon as I get one side done, of course, flip it right over. Get the other side cranking along, and I'll put a little block under here to hold this up. Okay, now you can see we got one side, I got 1 coat, and I'm going to run over and do the other side, top and bottom, and let it dry equally. That drying equally is what always helps you avoid a warp. And I'll take all the help I can get. Now one of the biggest tips I can give you, and I know everybody that has ever tried this has run into the same problem, is a lot of people, and I know I could name names here, have tried to spray the dope on early in the process. They've tried to spray the filler, spray the dope. And what happens right now, if you start spraying dope onto raw wood, there's much more thinner in sprayed on dope. And you absolutely will not get away with, unless you don't put any tape on the plane, you'll wind up with a myriad of problems, starting with a lot of thinner getting down into the wing and glue joints popping up, wood overswelling, getting it in by the hinges. If it's a foam wing, you'll wind up with the foam melting. This method of brushing, the way I'm showing, it doesn't sound like a big item, but it'll save you a lot of hours of, believe me, a lot of hours later on in sanding. You can see there's almost no brush marks using this technique. I've got both sides done equally, and I guess that's about as important a tip as you can get off of a video, is don't do both sides at once. That'll really, definitely do it. If you dope only one side, I've seen guys do this. Do one side, go put the wing away. By the time you dry it, it's off to a pretzel. Then you do the other side, and it's under tension, and yeah, maybe you'll get away with it, but a lot of times you don't. Using this technique, I think you'll be successful every time. Now, what I'll do, I'll let this dry. I'm taking Karen grocery shopping. I'm going to come back later, put another coat on, and then that should be dry overnight. I'll come back and put the light coat on, even the next session. So, again, what we're trying to do is not rush. And this is why I show things like this village on the video and different things that we get involved in, because if the only thing you're doing is working on a plane, you're always trying to rush it. If you divert your attention, this can be drying. Hey, let it dry. Look over there, she's making flower arrangements and all kinds of other stuff, and we're doing Joe's village. That village we made for Laura and Joe, by the way, that worked out super. What a great thing that was. And it's a lot of fun. You get yourself all bottled up in one thing, and all you're doing is rushing and rushing and rushing, and it seems like it's not as much fun. So we'll put this aside to dry and come back tonight. Now what I'm doing tonight, I want to get another coat of shrink. This will be the second coat. And then I'm done with the shrink dope. And I usually try to get that out of the shop so I don't use it by mistake. But one of the things that, hey, I'm trying to use every bit of time for drying here. I'm trying to divert some of the time away. You know what I'm going to do, because the family's in the house tonight, and it's raining like crazy out there. I don't even know if you can hear the rain. It is raining up a storm. Maybe I'll leave this in the furnace room here to dry tonight, so that the family doesn't all give me holy hell. Again, if you use that technique, back and forth, 45-degree angles, however you can get it on without leaving brush marks, boy, saves a lot of work later on. You can see what a beautiful night this is turning out to be. So we will be leaving this in the furnace room to dry here. It's a good idea to have a nail somewhere, preferably by a heating vent. So this can be drying, and we'll come back to this actually the next time we get to work on it. Probably be tomorrow. Now I got some photos here today from my friend from Hawaii, Mike Wada. And he's been running some stalkers. This is a photo of a motor breaking in. Said he's having real good luck with the stalkers, the 40 and 46s. Here's a side exhaust, obviously a side exhaust being broken in on a bench. Now look at how nice he has this. Hey Ventrini, why can't you organize your shop like this? Look at this. He has a cardinal kit. I love it. I love it. Super Tigers, organized little boxes. Oh, you can always pick up ideas from seeing other people's shops. I never miss a chance to see somebody else how they run their shop. Always can get, look, organized bottles, everything marked, a la Pro Stunt. And he has watched many of the Pro Stunt videos and said he owes all his finishing technology to me, which of course really belongs to Harold Price or whomever I got it from. I'm just the guy in between passing it on. Nice shop. This is Mike holding a wing, a shameless wing.
Now this is what I love about having friends all over the world. Of course, first off, you're on a big ego trip, you think you're like Elvis Presley or something, but this is nice. Not real fancy, but done the Urtnowski way. So I think. Now we're finally at the point where we're going to be doing some filler coat. Now, there's several different ways to approach this. I want to go right down this so you have all the information pretty much that I can get my hands on. Things that have and have not worked for me. Okay, auto primer. Easy to sand, relatively, but heavy. Okay, Bill Simons had a way, and I seriously tried this many times, never had the good results of just using all clear. He would just put on, and I guess it worked well for him, he'd put coat after coat after coat after coat after coat after coat, just put on until there was enough clear on a plane and then block sand it down to the way he wanted it. I never had good luck with that. Bill Simons did. He had some beautiful finishes. So my suggestion is, this is kind of a Vic Macaluso way of doing things. This is a Bill Simons way of doing things. This is the Windy way. And the Windy way, that talc filler, let's call it whatever we want, filler coat. What I try to do is, and again, prep that wood to death. The wood has to be prepped. Enough clear, 3, 5, 7 coats, depending on how thin you make it, till it's just the slightest bit shiny. Sand it all back down. Even if you have to do this 2 or 3 times, it's worth it. In between that, the filler, and I'm sorry, the tissue. Medium tissue, SG. On top of the tissue, 3, maybe 4 coats of clear. It depends. You need the tissue to be sand the first or second coat. Get a couple of coats of clear and prepare this for the filler. This should be perfectly flat by the time you're ready to do filler. Now you're ready to go ahead with filler. A good way to do this is to take a pint, and again, this is not, you can do quarts. 3608 S, thinner. Second choice would be Sig thinner, much more expensive. You want to take a pint, light coat. Okay, I also want to take, this is the part of it that gets tricky. I want to take enough talc. Now, I've heard all kind of stories about don't use perfume talc, don't use a Johnson's talc, don't use this talc, that talc, talc from hell. I haven't found any real difference in talc. It just seems to me like talc is talc. But what I want to do is mix these 3 together. Now it's an indeterminate amount of talc that I want to mix, and I would just say by looking at this, 1/3 of the mixture would be talc. Okay? If 1/3 was light coat, 1/3 was thinner, kind of a sloppy drawing. If we had 1/3 of each here, the talc would be 1/3. But now you want to take this mixture, that's basically 1/3 of each. It's going to be very, very thick. And what you want to do is a thing called decanting. Decanting means you let it sit 5 minutes, you shake it up real good, stir it, do anything you have to do, and what happens at the end of 5 minutes, everything falls to the bottom, and you have this thick glock at the bottom. Now you pour off what's on the top. This is generally the easiest way to do it. And this mixture that doesn't sink to the bottom in 5 minutes, this then becomes your filler. To that filler now, I'm going to add a little bit of color dope, any color. The choices are obvious. Blue is choice 1. Red is not a good choice. Black is not a good choice. Something that's going to cover easy is blue or light blue, and it's only there so you can see when you sand it away. You also want to add some Flexol, and we've done that to all the dope, and some fisheye. Most important in this mix, a drop of fisheye. Now, if you follow through this scenario and you come out with this mixture, you're going to have this mixture right here. This is going to be probably 2 pints of filler. or 2 quarts, depending on how you mix and how much you mix. You're going to have this amount ready to use. When you go to use it, you go away for the weekend or whatever, you come back, take this jar, shake the living hell out of it. Use it. Every 5 minutes or so, shake it again. Whatever sinks to the bottom, well, unless you really need it to fill in a gouge or something, let it all sink to the bottom. But you want to shake it every 5 minutes, because otherwise this stuff will all keep sinking to the bottom. Eventually you'll just have a jar, if you let it sit for a week, you'll have a jar of clear dope again. If you can pick up this technique of mixing filler, you can wind up with, hopefully, a very light, very nice finish. Now I'll put about half, roughly half. If you're wrong on filler, the way to be wrong is too much thinner and put it on too thin. If you put filler on too thin, what happens is you'll need more coats. If you put it on too thick, it'll look like a cracked riverbed. It'll have cracks in it. At that point in time, you know you're putting it on too thick. A very simple technology to mixing up and using this filler. But if you don't do it right, if you make the filler too thick, you're in big trouble. If you try to dig down in the bottom of the jar and brush it on like it's tar paper, like it's Jello, you're in trouble. Now I just have some, keep in mind all colored dope is made out of light coat. I'm just going to add just enough that I can tint this, and that's usually plenty. You just need a taste of this. Now the old talc. And again, this is not a critical, the talc is not some kind of critical thing. You can put the colored dope in now, you can put it in later. I've chose to put it in now. I already put in the fisheye and the flex oil. Don't leave that step out. You can put even more than you really need. I don't know what brand this is. This is quality. You notice this is the cheapest shit, probably $1.39 for a 10-pound bag. This is probably cornstarch. And the only purpose of having the blue in there is so that you can see the spots where you're sanding filler down. You can see the low spots. Now, if this is a little on the thin side, in fact, I can see I've just put in another shot of this, the light blue. Just a little juice of that. The trick is, and keep in mind, if it's too thick, you are going to make a mess. And even if you make a nice job, it's going to be too heavy. Notice I already off camera marked, this is the Spitfire filler. It's a good idea, at least my philosophy is you should never use up last year's paint. You should always start with new stuff, then you eliminate one of the dragons out of the cave. So if you have all these materials handy, it's relatively simple. You'll come up with a nice, this should be enough to do the wing and tail. And then I'll mix another batch if I need it. But for right now, I don't like to mix 10 gallons of this because I'm mixing it basically for one plane at a time. Now when I put the material in my storage cabinet, you can see I have each jar marked, each can, what year it is. This is the filler from this year, from that year, from who knows what, who knows when. But each one, have a mark on each can. What's in it, what year it's from, whatever. Identify it in some way so you can always go back and you'll know what you have. Now just one tip, a thing that I ran into that's not a good idea. One year, I don't know why, I decided I was going to make red filler with red. Red is not a good choice. If you're going to pick another color beside blue, pick green, pick purple. Red is not a good choice. I would not recommend red. I don't remember which plane it was, but one of these, oh God, you needed 1,000 coats of white and the red keeps bleeding through. Red is a bleeder, keeps bleeding through. Now, as I always do, get a piece of 320 paper here. I want to see if the stuff that I'm going over is dry. This is not really to sand the surface to get it any smoother than it is. It's relatively smooth by now. But I want to see after sanding it, and I'll show this up on a macro lens,
a critical, get all the edges radiused, of course. Do I have dust? I should see dust coming off of this, not chewing gum. Let me show the sandpaper up close. When you look at this on the macro lens now, you should see sandpaper here. Not when you see globs of chewing gum, you didn't let it dry long enough, or it's too thick, one or the other. Now, given the fact that we've let this sit for 5 minutes, I don't want to shake it up again. I look at my watch. I always have a stopwatch when I'm doing filler. I take what's right on the top. What stays in suspension is just about right. I'm using the same brush I used on the light coat. Now, another question that always comes up. Why don't I put filler coat on the tissue? Well, I don't think you really have to, because then you're only making yourself more work. I've found it easier. I know people have done it that way and they've made a nice plane or whatever. But I found you can save some weight if you just use just clear on the tissue. The open bays, like on a Nobler or on an Aries or a T-Bird. Notice I'm putting this on, got the strokes in one direction, get it nice and smooth. Lay the strokes out in this direction. Put the strokes 45, back 45. The purpose of the 45s is it saves you sanding. I touch up all the edges. Let's see if we can see this up on a macro lens close. You can see the brush strokes going in every different direction. Now when this dries up, this will be relatively easy to sand. I'll get one coat on everything here and then we'll look at how it dried up. Now I always look at, and I always play with and try to sand the little parts first. The flaps, the elevators, the gear doors. Because if the material is too mushy, soft, undried, if it starts to ball up, it'll usually put a gouge in the plane. It'll put a gouge that it's impossible to sand out. So if I'm going to have a mistake on a plane, let it be in the outboard tip box or something, not in the top side. Again, another thing is whenever you sand in filler, if you're not sure, always sand the bottom first. Always sand the outboard tip first, because who cares if you put extra paint out there? It isn't important. Always have that whole philosophy right from the get-go. Now, it's going to be about, we're coming up on 4 minutes. It's going to be about 4 minutes since I shook the filler, so I'll do these little gear doors and then we'll be ready for another shakedown. But the reason for all this shaking, and it may seem like, yeah, I've done it in the past without doing the shakedown, but you always get the lightest effect if you keep it that way. Keep it at about a 5-minute suspension. Now when I poured this off, there was quite a bit of extra talc in the bottom. I don't have all that, but if I was to just use this without ever pouring it off, every time I stopped shaking it, it would all run right down. Once you get the 5-minute mix, you're usually pretty good from that point on. Let's see what this little guy looks like. Again, a lot of the brush marks will disappear. On little parts like this, it isn't real critical because you're going to sand it out anyway. Another tip, if you're going to have a part like this, anticipate how you're going to sand it. You're going to sand probably, I just put my finger in it, you're going to sand this way. So put the brush marks this way. Put the brush marks in the opposite way, especially on tissue, that you anticipate sanding it. And on a little part like this, well, we may as well do it. We have nothing to lose here. Another thing with filler too, you probably, if you're going to put, I would say, 2 to 3 coats of filler on, you might want to put one, again, this is all depending on how nice you want the finish. You might want to put 1 coat on, do a real light sanding with 320, put another coat on. It's really irrelevant. You can put all the filler on and then sand it once, and probably that'll be fine. But then when you do the silver, you'll probably have to sand the silver an extra time. So in this case, it's just as easy to sand out the filler. But you got to build up, the whole purpose of this is you have to build up a base coat. It's called a substrate. Once you have a nice block, flat, solid substrate, from that point on, finishing the plane in color and striping and ink, everything is perfect. But if you put all that fancy paint on and you have mountaintops, as soon as you go to sand to clear, you're going to break through those spots and ruin your whole paint job. So it's easier to pay now. Pay me now or pay me later. So now see, even though I've done the shakedown,
You see how much is going to the bottom? I want to keep that amount in suspension. Once I bleed off that top amount, I'd like that to stay in suspension. So if I constantly do this every 5 minutes, I know all the filler will have the same amount of talc. If you don't, the first brush stroke will have a lot, and each one will have less and less and less and less and less as you go through your small parts. Now I'll just put this aside. Now, and this is a good tip too, this is a good way to save time. What you can do while you're waiting for that to shake down, I can block sand out some of my other parts, get all the edges done. As long as I have that stopwatch going, I'm safe. By the way, these parts are pretty smooth. By this point in time, you should have a real nice, smooth, relatively nicely radiused edges to work with. Sanding should be very easy now, and not time consuming at all. Should be able to just go right through these, 1, 2, 3. Let me show this up close. I don't know how much you can see on the macro lens with this, but let's take a shot at it. You can still see a little bit of the tissue coming through, just the slightest little bit. Well, after we get the first coat of filler on that, most of that should disappear. Now, putting a filler on, the only purpose of, again, I just keep saying it because it's so important, just saves you so much sanding later on down the road when you do all these little steps in between. This sanded out very, very nicely, by the way. Now I'll try to get some of the brush marks in. This is just to save me sanding time. Now I'm going to finish the rest of these little parts off camera. We'll get back to this when it's time to do the wing. The rest of this stuff is just redundant repeating of what we've already done. Now when you're sanding out the wing, the single most important thing on a whole plane is not to sand directly on that edge where the tissue joins the wood until we get some more dope on it. So I'm purposely going right up to the edge but not sanding out onto it. Anywhere there's double tissue, I want to start sanding the joint down so that joint starts disappearing. Again, now this is going to be a very time-consuming thing. I'll probably spend 2 hours or so, hour and a half, 2 hours sanding out the wing. The paint is powdering off. You can see how the paint is just powdering off. All these joints where the tissue is joining, this is what I'm trying to knock down. I'm going to be real careful where these edges are, because what I'm going to do as soon as we're finished with the filler, I'm going to let the filler go out onto the tissue a little bit, and then when I dope the panel with light coat, I'll let the light coat come out onto here. So in effect, I'll have a stripe around each bay and the cap strips. Once I build that up a little bit, then I'll have some material. I can be aggressive and sand that out, but right now I'm just going to try to work right around it until I get more material around it. And each one of these bays around the edge, I want to have extra material. Very, very important. Want to kill all the edges, radius all the edges, smooth out the leading edge, working that reverse curve that I have out here. I'll have to do that without a block and get the edges all trued in. Again, this will be a kind of a time-consuming thing. I won't put this whole thing on, obviously, on the tape, but this is the time where you really want to take some time. Now when I get to the tissue, I'm just touching it with the sandpaper. Not really even sanding it, I'm just knocking off the little dots. Just the least little bit to defuzz it. Defuzzing is a better word than sanding. Very gently around the corners because we don't have a lot of material there yet. I just want you to see how the powder is just coming right off here. Because you give it adequate drying time, makes it very, very easy to sand. Now I've been putting a special amount of effort up to where the double tissue joins here. At this point in time, I'd like to get that joint completely knocked down for as much of it so I don't have to fill that all in. I'm ready to do the top side here. And it's really taken a lot longer to sand this out than I thought it would. All these curves just add a tremendous amount of time, but it's well worth it. I probably won't even finish this in this session, but I can see it took about twice the amount of time I expected to sand that one side. I'm just going to take my time and, hey, it's the price you pay for building a Spitfire. Now as I'm finishing this wing up, and again, I can't tell you, this really took a lot longer than I thought it would. Adamusco, you're making a slave out of me. I'll be lucky if I get the first coat of filler on this wing tonight. Anyway, I want to thank Joe. He did send me a really nice video that kept me occupied while I was sanding this wing about the U.S. Steelworks and the life of the U.S. Steelworks. Appreciate that a whole lot. It was very nice. Getting these corners, is no way you can do this without a machinist ruler. You have to, this corner comes, whoop, it comes to a point like a picture frame, and if you just leave the corner square, you will get a very a funny look. It's difficult. The only way I know to do this, and that's why I wanted to put this on the tape, is with the machinist ruler. And if you roll the ruler right back, you'll get that perfect corner. Just like a picture frame. Now another area that's difficult to get is right to keep the radius that's on the trailing edge going past the horn. I want to get in here and get this, just any extra material dope tissue. Doesn't have to be there. Just give this a nice edge. Now the final step before I put the filler on, and especially after a night like this, man, look at this, I'm covered with powder and dust and everything. I want, even though I've block sanded most of this, I want to run my hand over it, and I want to pick up little spots that I think can be sanded just with the palm of my hand. And if you do it by hand, you'll find little spots that normally they skip by you somehow. Nothing seems to be better, especially on a curved surface like this, than just using your bare hand. And of course, it's crazy to put more filler on this. We're going to put the filler on. I hope I can get this coat on tonight. It's pointless to put filler over things that are just lumpy and bumpy and everything. You may as well try to get each coat flattened out as much as possible. That's really the secret to a super light finish, is getting that sanding in between coats, and don't cheat yourself. Now, in the other area, and I have to be real careful here, I have the little tiny block, is just where each cap strip joins the top sheeting. And I'm going to absolutely go over every little spot of this before I put the filler on. Because once I get the filler on, I'd like this to be level before I actually start filling in holes. In other words, if there's an unevenness, I'd like to shave the mountain right now, not fill in the holes. Now remember, I'm just going to go, see, this is another problem, this stuff that works its way, it dries around the neck of the jar. I notice I've been getting that. Again, I want to try the same technique. I'll take one spot, I want to go out over onto the tissue just a little bit. Get a nice wet coat on. And try to disperse the brush marks, minimize the sanding. And notice I didn't go out onto the tissue. See, at some point in time, this stuff works its way into the paint, so what you can do every once in a while is just get a paper towel and clean the top of that jar. That just saves you a lot of work. Now out here, you can see I've gone out onto the, let's see if we can get this on the macro lens. Out onto the paper, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch to most. And then when I do the clear, I'll go back over here. Again, I want to do both sides equally, of course. And I'll just get the rest of the filler on this wing. This just saves getting this, you can see this stuff, it like dries and then it works its way onto your brush. If you keep the mouth of the jar clean, you can minimize that anyway. There's crap on here. Or it's nice to get these strokes opposite. Obviously we're going to want to sand in this direction. Save us a little bit of time. And every little bit you can save on a wing like this is worth it. I want to make sure I'm out over the tissue. Most important thing, out over the tissue here. Now what I want to show is the length of this brush. This to me is a striping brush, even though that isn't the true name. I call this a striping brush. And I want to use this to run down the cap strips, but I want to go out onto each cap strip, out onto the open bays a little bit, 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch. Now a lot of times you can just, in a couple of strokes, get out onto the tissue a little bit. Takes a little time just to draw it out. Now the most important thing here is not to get a big glob. Put it on in a lot of thin coats. Actually, it wouldn't matter if you put on, 10 or 15 thin coats. It'll just save you the sanding. But I want to build up the filler around the edges here. Now while the dope is wet, I can just go right around the edge here. Remember, I'm going over the edge. It's the perimeter that I'm trying to cover. Everywhere that tissue ends, there's a razor edge. Now this step, you could put 8-10 coats on this. This adds an amount of weight that you can't even measure on a grain scale. But it keeps you from poking through that edge. And boy, there is nothing more frustrating right now than just sanding. That's why I was very careful with the sanding. I didn't want to put a hole in that edge. These are all little tips and tricks. Now, if you're doing a foam wing plane, of course, you save all this time. If you're doing a straight line plane, you know, a typical straight wing PM or whatever, SV11, well, it doesn't matter. And there's no curves in it, you save even more time. But this is a real wooden aeroplane. This is, and I'm just doing this to get the brush marks out. Okay, that gives you an idea. You got one panel now, one coat. I'll do this, run over there, get the other wing done, then flip it over and get, in other words, I'm trying to keep it that everything is wet at the same time. Then I'll do the tissue all at once. Tissue, 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 and hang the wing up to dry. Now I'm trying to get a little bit extra on the edges too, all the edges. No, it's always a good idea to get some extra right in the middle of the wing. That's where it's going to take the most load. And where it's going to join the body, you'd like to have the sheeting as rigid as possible and avoid the stress riser going out, so a little bit extra in the middle is always a good idea. I always like to get a little bit extra around the gear blocks so I can block sand them in. And obviously the most important spot is the leading edge. Always 2 or 3 extra coats on the leading edge while we're doing this. Now I just love about this point in time, it really starts to shape up to be an airplane. It's really starting to be like a little person, a little child. I'm sure the women in the audience can relate to that. Now even though this seems like a very labor-intensive thing, I keep thinking about this. I keep thinking about how labor-intensive it is when you buff through one of these cap strips or one of these edges. And if you've ever done that, if you've buffed through a sharp edge that's poking its way through, it's usually right on a cap strip. And this is the best way I know it. And this is the second coat now. What I'm going to do while I have this upside down is just put a second coat of filler right along here. And then I'm going to let that dry and then flip it over and put the clear on the tissue. But you can give this as many coats as you want. There's no limit to the amount of coats you can give it. The more the better. To 8, 10 coats. As long as you put it on thin, you can protect that edge and keep that edge from being a razor point, a mountaintop sticking through that you sand through. And you notice all of the really nice looking planes, you see that edge is a perfect transition. You look at Joe Adamusco's stuff, perfect transition from cap strip. You know, it's a perfect flow. Now because this is dried out a whole day, this looks kind of nice and tight. If it still was baggy, I would let it dry an extra day first, and then I maybe consider putting a third coat of shrink coat on there of super coat. But for right now, you don't want to have a drum right now. This paint has really only been hardening up for about 24 hours, so you sure don't want to get that like a drum right now, or else somewhere down the road you're either going to have a warp or a rip. Just about nice right now. Now as I do the open bays, now I can go out onto the wood the same amount, 1/8 of an inch. Again, trying to keep the brush marks to a minimum. Whole trick to these type of wings or I-beam wings is to get the ribs as they come through the paper to be perfect. Once you master that technique, boy, you are so home free all, it's ridiculous. And you'll be able to do this over and over and over again. But if nobody shows you or clues you in on how to do this, and boy, I have to over and over again thank the people that were helpful to me. John DeTavio, Harold Price, people that were perfectly willing to share what they knew and really made our life a lot easier. Now anytime I loosen up the paper, I have one side wet, I want to flip this right over and get the other side wet so that pretty much all the tissue is wet at the same time. Remember, that's a concept that I like to use. And it's certainly, even if there's an inconvenience factor, it's really cheap insurance that somewhere down the road you're not going to put the model out in the sun and one side will be shrinking more than the other because
was doped differently. You never want to dope one side of a wing and then let it dry and then do the other side, or a flap or an elevator. Again, these are all basic modeling techniques. There's nothing. I'm sure this applies to RC ships. It applies to any number of types of modeling. Getting the brush marks out. Even a plane like George is building, Big Tsunami, the same rules apply. No difference. Now I'll set everything aside to dry. Come back to this either tonight after work or tomorrow. But notice the whole thing here hinges on is I've got it hanging by a nail, and I've got both sides wet at the same time. And both sides in the course of the next 6, 8, 10 hours will be drying up equally, and hopefully we will have the minimum chance of having any kind of a warp or anything crazy happening. You can see how that paper softens right up. You can almost touch it already. Softens right up as soon as you put dope on, but boy, when that stuff starts shrinking, it's like a vice. Like a vice. I've got a lot of vices myself. Okay. Tonight I'm just taking a look at this. I want to get another coat of filler on here. I really don't have to sand this coat out. This is really velvety smooth. Basically because I'll put the time in early on. And I'm just looking for anything that looks like it needs to be addressed. There's a couple little spots here. And these spots are coming from picking that goop up off the edge of the jar. Now, if I really wanted to be super fanatic, and of course I do, what I could do is just touch this with some 320 or 400. I don't want to sand the filler off, I just want to knock it down. And because it's been drying here for, I guess, 8, 9 hours, I've got a real good shot at dust right off. Maybe just kiss all the edges, nothing special though, and then just get another coat of filler on this. And boy, this is really starting to look nice. That Adamusco knows his stuff. I don't care what Damarel says about you. Now one of the things I can do here, just going to add just a little more thinner to the second coat. Just a little bit more. And I'll clean the top of the jar before I start working on this. What that'll do, it'll let this next coat flow out better, and being everything's drying up so nice, I may get away with a minimum amount of sanding on this. Now this mix is just a little thinner. And I see that? This stuff, even though I clean the jar, this stuff keeps coming off. Got to keep the top of the jar clean or else you wind up making extra sanding work. Again, this absolutely is coming out nice. Now sometimes you do this and it just comes out, you're not happy with it. But a lot of the keys, the letting it dry in between coats and putting it on in thin coats saves an awful lot of work. You know, when you make a plane like this, it's like making a Stradivarius violin. You're not looking to make, at least I'm not, you know, just grind out McDonald hamburgers here. We really, I don't know, I guess my perception of what's supposed to happen with a guy like this, he's supposed to come to life. He's supposed to have a life of his own, an identity of his own. And I don't know how many people share that, but if you do, you know, I know I feel like these planes have a life of their own, they have a personality or whatever. Anyway, if we get this, this will be the second coat of filler. And one of the reasons I'm kind of putting a push on here is I had a terrible thing happen. We had 2 storms here, one right after another. And I had raw sewage in the basement of my 2-family house. And just when I got that cleaned up and thought that was the end of it, a tree fell. And I've got another day of sawn trees over there. Luckily, I'm pretty much of a Paul Bunyan. But it's nice knowing that while I'm over there, and I'm probably going to kill a day over there, better part of a day, while I'm over there, if I stay up tonight and get the second coat of filler on everything, this will all be dried out an extra day. So I can save myself a little bit of extra time in the work process here. Anytime you can let things dry for an extra day, an extra weekend, extra any amount of time, you know, try to schedule your work. I always talk about that time management thing, so that you have something dry, and that's the reason, one of the reasons we build a plane this way, is so something can always be drying, and you always have something you can work on. And it's a good philosophy. It works well. Now after 2 coats, this is still wet of course, it's really starting to build up a nice substrate, a nice base, and you can candle it. This is candling. Now another little tip, the thinner you make the filler, the more thinner you add to it, actually the more often you should shake it up. We're probably here at a point where we should be shaking this up every 4 minutes or so. I can see from the side of the jar that the talc that's in there is sinking down to the bottom a lot quicker than when the paint was thick. But it's, again, you build up a little technique. It doesn't take long. You go to both ends of the spectrum and figure out this is too thick, this is too thin, and then you have it. At some point in time, you have it in the bank. I'm just going to do the rest of this off camera. I'll basically repeat everything, including the second coat on the wing, second coat of clear on the tissue, and then when I'm finished, I can put this baby to sleep. Now, first thing in today's mail, and believe me, this is unbelievable. John Pothier has been doing a lot of work on the catalogs for me, and actually been putting my my column on diskette for Tom Morris, so really thank him a lot for that. Anyway, he sent this in, and this is a Spitfire stunner. It's just amazing to me how many people really have a love in their heart of Spitfires. I got stuff from DeJulia today, Steve DeJulia, the ultimate finisher of tutors. I know his wife's going to buy him a Cardinal kit for Christmas. Oh, high pressure sales tactics. Anyway, he's the one that gave me that Strega wine, by the way, that DeJulia guy. Anyway, this is from John Pothier. This is kind of a neat thing. If anybody really would like a copy of this nostalgic thing, I can run them off a copy, of course. No problem. It's nice. We're trying to get everything there ever was in the world about Spitfires on one video. And it looks like we're well on. Oh, this is just the rest of the article. Well on the way to having it done. That's from John Pothier. Let's see what that was in August 55. Anyway, thanks to John for that. Now this is from Steve DeJulia. These are, and this looks like really a Jack Cheeks mosquito. Oh, I love this Spitfire stuff. Mosquito stuff. Anyway, he sent these in and he lambasted me, tore me apart, literally, for wanting to paint the bottom of the plane yellow. He says, listen, you turkey, this is the color the bottom of the plane is supposed to... Look at this radial engine. Hey, Steve, send me that for Christmas. You looking to buy me something for Christmas? Here we are. Anyway, Steve DeJulia, look at this. More pictures. I don't believe this. I'll send these on to Stunt News, of course, as I do with all the pictures. And just to rub it in, he says Dan Banjock, he's glad Dan Banjock kicked my ass at the end of last year. Steve, oh my God, even the 49ers lose a game or two. Don't worry about it. Hey, check it out. That is some nice mosquito. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And as if we weren't getting enough Spitfire stuff, can you believe this? This came from Mike Cavell, who, obviously, Tampa president, he's a lover of Spitfires too. What I'm amazed at, and of course, so many people, I'll have to write a little thing for Stunt News thanking these people. So many people have sent, look at these invasion stripes, so many people have sent stuff in. It's absolutely unbelievable. And this is a long, detailed thing. I'll just run through this quick on the video. There's just Spitfire after Spitfire after Spitfire on here. Lots of ideas for paint jobs. I'll obviously share these with Adam Usko. More ideas, unbelievable. Look at that lettering. That's unusual lettering. I know Adam Usko is going to like that lettering. And a painted leading edge stripe. Spitfires. Now it's getting so I can't go to the bathroom without having some Spitfire literature to read. Unbelievable.
Look, this is one of the versions with the big cowl scoop. That might be some, I bet you Walt Pray'd like that. With the smaller size rudder, must have the low power engine. Still got to get Adamusco. Adamusco, get off your ass and figure out how we're going to do these exhaust scoops. We got to get somebody out there involved in that part of the project. This is the version that only had one radiator. Some of the versions had one radiator, some had two. This had the experimental wingtips. Thank God they never went into production. Ugly. And again, this is just part of why I love doing this. It's just so neat. Just the idea that people all over the world, really, Saudi Arabia, England, Australia, and Denmark have all sent me pictures of Spitfires. I just can't believe this. This is even, I'm getting more documentation even that I had for Tsunami and Strega. And here's that ugly wing again. Do not care for that wing. Looks like a tulip or something. It's like not crazy about that wing. Here's one they had rocket-assisted takeoffs for the Can you believe this? There's a picture of it. This is what's interesting about this stuff. And by the way, they did land Spitfires on carriers. A lot of the information, the later Spitfires with the big engines. I'm learning so much about Spitfires, I feel like I could join the RAF. But anytime you do a modeling project, this is always one of the fun things to do, is do the research on it. And whether it's a scale model or a semi-scale or in our case a fantasy model, the research, the camaraderie, the friendships, everything combined just to make an interesting project. And you don't get this when you build straight line stunners. You can't really get excited about building a, a Nobler or something. I can anyway. Just page after page. This is all from Mike Cavell. Just Spitfires forever here. This looks like that guy in the Mustang movie that waves to the kid as he flies by in Empire of the Sun. I haven't put that. Now, one thing I was very fortunate to be able to do is I had a few days of work. We had 2 storms in a row over here. I had some work to do on my rental property. And what I managed to do is get all the filler on here before I went over to do the work. So this has been sitting for, this is the 3rd day actually. This is going to be 3 days. This filler has been sitting. When you can let the filler sit for 3 days, especially if it's by an open heating vent, what should happen is you should be able to take some 400 sandpaper or some 320, depending on how smooth you're trying to get this, and just powder the filler right off. Now in this case, of course, it's a lot of flat areas, we'll use a sanding block, and I'll put some of this up on the macro lens if I can. Another good trick at this point in time is you're going to have a lot of dust falling on your table. So a good idea is get a little towel out, let all the dust fall on the towel every hour or so, take it outside and shake it out. This way you're not breathing the dust in and you're not dropping it all over the house. So let me get the small parts. Again, always start with the small parts, get a little sanding done on them, and just take a little look at how much sanding is going to be involved, and then we'll try to make try to make the decision as to if we need another coat of filler coat, if we don't need another coat of filler coat. Is this going to be ready? Radius all the edges, even the inside edges. Let me show this up close, see what this looks like. Now this is the point where you make your decision. You make a decision now. If this was to have a rough, and you could rough feeling, you could still feel the grain, you might want to get one more coat of filler on here. I don't know that till I'll do about half of the parts before I make a decision. But once I get this as smooth as, and see the dust that comes off here, you can see the dust up here. The paper, it should dust right off. You should get no little chewing gum spots on here. It should be powdering right off. Now, a couple of things. If you see, this is very difficult to sand. If you're having trouble sanding this and you're not seeing that powder come off, you know you're having a problem. The paint might not be dry and long enough. You can always let it dry a little more. It can mean that you put the paint on too thick. Now see, I've almost gone through the tissue right there. Of course, there's a high spot. little high spot right around the ring, but basically this looks like it's coming off pretty well. Now there's no big deal. See, now I've sanded through the edge here because I have a high spot, and that's what's supposed to happen, is you're supposed to be able to pick up all the high spots here. Now the worst that can happen is you sand down to where you put a hole in the tissue. If you do, go get the filler coat out and just go right over that spot right away. Let it dry an hour or so and you can go right back and blend it right in. Now because I've sanded through on these edges, everything underneath here is nice and solid. Now what I'll try to do is get one extra coat of filler on this, put this up by the heating vent, give it an hour or so to dry, and I'll probably be able to dust this right back off. And this might need one more coat of filler, but I always like to do the test on a small part, and obviously before I do the wing or tail. It's a lot easier to do this test and not put the extra coat of filler on, because if you put the extra coat of filler on and don't sand it off, it's weight. If you put it on and sand it off, it's extra work. So it's always easier to be on this side of the equation, having a little less on and then just putting that last coat on, than putting it on and having to sand it off. Now all these little parts, you can see that they're dusting right off. All these little parts make great little test modules, so you can get your technique down pat. If possible, you'd always like to do the bottom before you do the top. You want to radius all the corners off. And keep in mind, the purpose of this is when you're really looking to achieve some perfection. If you're just looking to slap a finish on and go flying, obviously this is not a necessary thing. This is when you're in the pursuit of perfection. And what I'm trying to do with these models is create that little world of perfection. And it's really just for myself. It's for no other purpose. Even if people that judge these planes at the Nationals, half of them don't know what the hell they're looking at anyway. So you're really doing this just to satisfy yourself. And I can see I'm at the same point. I'm a little bit light on the filler. I've gone through on an edge. So I'm going to just put on one more coat of filler here. And it doesn't matter. You know, another thing is you can put as many coats of filler on as you want, as long as you sand them all off. As long as you don't wind up with the whole thing. Now you notice, even though this is tinted blue, there's not a lot of filler left on. When I'm done, there's just the slightest hint of filler on here. There isn't a big, thick, glocky 20 coats of filler left on. Now what I'm trying to do here is candle this part, and you can see the little indentations. This is before it's been sanded at all. You can see up close there's a little detent there. Along the hinge line there's some little rough spots. This is an unsanded part, and I'm just looking, I'm candling it. Let that light, if you can see the light bouncing off of it, and you see all those little indentations. And when I take that over there and sand it, what I'm going to look for is, the thing I'm trying to achieve here is I'm trying not to put on any more filler than I have to, so that I don't obviously have to sand it off. That's the whole deal. But I can see right here that this looks like it's going to need another coat, because I can still see some little valleys in there. No matter how I candle it, I can see I haven't filled in all the valleys. So I'll sand this down. This will probably need another coat, and I'll do this to each part individually. Every part individually, make a decision. Does this need more filler, or do I have enough on here? And remember, what I'm trying to pass on or convey through the video is the philosophy of doing this. Because it's not really all that technically difficult. It's labor intensive. It requires patience. But if somebody can just point you in the right direction, you do this once or twice, and maybe it'll take longer than you expect, but eventually you're going to be able to just do this in your sleep. Normally this is not anything but a time-consuming thing. Just takes a little time. And if you see that the paint is powdering off like this, you know you're well on the way to having a great finish. This is a good technique, by the way, just in case you do pick up some chewing gum, you can get rid of it right away. And we're hoping that we can get this prepared, maybe even by the end of the next session, get this prepared and ready for the silver. And that's where it really starts to get to be an art form. That's where you really make the decision that this is going to be a piece of perfection instead of just a piece of balsa wood. I want to get one side sanded out and then just try to do a comparison. The sanded side to the unsanded side. This really has the look of it's going to need one more coat of filler though. Now this is the side that I sanded. You can even see the difference in the color, I think. This side I've gone through in enough spots. Let's see if I can, you can see all the powder coming off here. What's happened here is it really did need another coat. In fact, everything looks like it needs another coat, but I don't want to skimp. I'd rather sand this coat and then put a third one on. I think ultimately it's a lot easier to do it that way than to pile on a ton of this filler and then have to sand it all off. You can see how it's just powdering right off, and that's the key to the whole thing. Alright, you can even hear this. This is the unsanded side. This side is much smoother, yet it still needs, if you really candle it up to the light, and I don't know how effective this is, no matter how you candle it to the light, you can see the little threads in the silk span still coming through. They show up as dry spots. If you can look at this, you can see right up on the leading edge here, there's a dry spot. You see that dry spot right on the leading edge? You can see there's some little dry spots along here. Well, those dry spots are where it needs another coat of filler. So without even belaboring the point, I guess I can assume the whole thing is going to need one more coat of filler. I'll get busy and start sanding this all out. Get everything sanded out and get the other coat of filler on here. You're only fooling yourself if you think you can beat the system this way. Because if you go to put silver on this, if we were to spray silver, you'll have to sand the silver, put more silver, sand it. It's easier to sand a coat of filler than silver. And you want to get the filler perfect before we go on to the silver. Now, as I always do, after finishing up all the work with the block, the last thing is just dress everything off with the soft side of your hand with a piece of sandpaper. This helps get into the valleys just a little bit. We're working on building up this substrate here. We're very close to having enough substrate, but we're also getting near the end of this tape, so I want to pick up the rest of this substrate and the silver on the next tape. But keep in mind, this is just my technique for getting the substrate very light, very nice, all at the same time. And that is a difficult combination. And even if you achieve 90% of it, you'll have a very, very nice, functional, not too heavy, and the finish you'll be proud of it, believe me. I also take that machinist ruler and get in all the corners and angles that I can right now before I start to build up big glocks of dope. Get in all these corners and angles. I don't know how much tape we have left, but we will pick this up on the next tape in our quest for perfection. And even though this sounds very time consuming, once you master this, you are a master. Believe me, people will envy that you can do this. You get the right amount of substrate and not have the model wind up weighing 90 ounces. And it's a good idea to keep the mouth of that jar clean too. We don't wind up putting any little things we're going to have to sand off back into the filler. Alright, now we're going to pick this up on the next tape. Building a substrate, and I'll get the rest of the parts done here off camera. Building a substrate and getting ready to put the first coat of silver on here.